So glad you're with us for the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Yes, we finally made it to the end of another week. Feels like Trump in the Middle East was about 3 weeks ago, but everything just piles into a short time frame now with all the news we deal with. But we do have good, bad, and crazy today, plus a special commemoration at the end. So you'll definitely want to stick around for that. And Jim, let's start with debate night. Multiple major debates took place last night. One was in the race for Attorney General in Virginia. The other was in the race for New York City mayor. Let's start in Virginia, where, of course, the big issue heading into that debate between Jason Miyares, the Attorney General, who's already in office, and the Republican nominee again, and then Jay Jones, the Democrat, who's become very famous lately for all the wrong reasons. Those text messages that were exposed a couple of weeks ago, thanks to your colleague Audrey Fahlberg, and wishing death on the then House Speaker and wishing the House Speaker's wife would have to hold a dead child so the House Speaker might change his position on policy. Well, obviously that issue came up. Jay Jones tried to neutralize it in the opening by apologizing and then spending the rest of his time talking about fighting Donald Trump, which isn't really the job of the Attorney General. Jason Miyares also talked about how Jay Jones is running for the wrong office. He'd rather fight the fights in Washington and should really be running for Congress if that's what he wants to do. But he did, of course, address the Jay Jones texting scandal and did so in a devastating way.
He's asking you to hire him to be the top prosecutor. And I have to make this observation. He keeps saying that he is sorry. Jay, if you're really sorry, you wouldn't be running. If you really understood the ramifications of what you said about an innocent mom and her children, you know Todd Gilbert. You served with him. Jennifer would come to the General Assembly. She would bring her children. We would see them run in the hallways. They were 2 and 5 years old at the time. This wasn't a hypothetical. This wasn't some figure that you know from far away. You actually know Todd. This is a flesh and blood, real husband. Jennifer is a real mom. These are real kids. How in the world could you ever show compassion and comfort a grieving mother that has ever lost a child to violence? Because, Virginians, there is no cry like the cry of a mother that has lost her child. A prosecutor knows this because they stood in that courtroom. Jay Jones has never understood this because he's not a prosecutor. He's a politician trying to save his career.
Dang. Jason Miyares, very, very good there, not only laying out the facts, but also personalizing it, saying, this is not just a figure that you know abstractly. You knew this person, you knew his whole family, and you still wouldn't take it back even after your colleague on the text thread said over and over and over again, please stop. And so, Jim, we'll get to the New York City mayor's debate in just a second. What's your reaction to that one?
Well, I noticed over at Politico, their lead story on the debate says, quote, "I'm ashamed," unquote. In debate, Virginia's Jones apologizes for violence-themed texts. Violence-themed, I don't think really gives you the full taste of it, but it's a limited space in a headline. When the big headline is you declaring to the public that you're ashamed, that's less than ideal. Now, I've heard people arguing that Jay Jones does not have enough experience in a courtroom in criminal cases to be an effective state attorney general. And I think this is really unfair because he's been in a criminal courtroom as a defendant because he was going 116 miles per hour on I-64, 46 miles over the speed limit. When the amount of miles over the speed limit you're doing is pretty darn fast by itself, convicted of reckless driving, that can get you up to a year in jail. I know it's going to shock you, listeners. Jay Jones did not get a year in jail. He got community service, and 1,000 hours of his community service he did on behalf of his own political action committee. Do you like honestly, you want to criticize Miyares? This is one of the most embarrassing things that's happened in the Virginia's criminal court case over the last couple of years. But this is 2022. This is not ancient history. This is, this has just been the last couple of years there. And you say, oh, well, does Jay Jones have any, prosecutorial experience? He was Assistant Attorney General in the Office of Attorney General of the District of Columbia. He was a member of the Office of Consumer Protection. Now, I'm not going to say that never matters, but that's not exactly putting away Hannibal Lecter here. That's not exactly putting away hardened criminals. So you look at this, and we've been, lamenting this since I got back from India and discussing this revelation about these texts. If you're the Virginia Democrats, is this really the best guy you could have nominated for state attorney general? There's got to be somebody else out there who, has actually prosecuted some criminals and who would be a good choice for this sort of thing, and who hasn't wished death upon his colleagues and hasn't sung the praises of his colleagues watching their children die in their arms. Like this guy's a psycho, and he's not particularly experienced. And oh, by the way, he makes David Letterman look like a safe driver. And so this is what Jason Miyares really needs to be reelected as state attorney general here in Virginia, just as a test of common sense. If they happen to elect Jay Jones, put the electorate of Virginia in the concussion protocol. See if they've taken a blow to the head, because this is not. There's no logic to this.
No, and I think he makes a good point. You're going to have to spend time advocating on behalf of crime victims, which a lot of Democrats have a problem now because they're so pro-criminal. But you're going to have to comfort these families who have suffered horrific losses. And when everyone knows what your background is and wishing harm or death on political opponents, doesn't exactly give you the most credibility. People need to be able to trust their...
Greg, that's unfair. He can say to these families, I know exactly how your perpetrator feels.
Yes, exactly.
I know exactly how the person who did this to your family member feels. So,
yeah,
he is empathetic. He does relate, just not to the party you prefer.
Just to the wrong side. Yeah. All right, quickly, let's go over to New York City. Mamdani and Cuomo got most of the attention on the stage last night. I assume that's due to the poll numbers. It's kind of what you see in every presidential primary debate. The people who have the better poll numbers get more of the time. But Curtis Sliwa, not disappointing us. When it came to the issue of crime, he summed it up pretty well when it comes to the three guys on stage.
But what I will say is, thank God I'm not a professional politician. We have the architect and we have the apprentice of no cash bail, which has been a disaster. We have the architect and the apprentice here of Raise the Age. My own son was almost killed because of that in a gang attack. We have the architect and we have the apprentice of Close Rikers Island, which would just release criminals in the street. Thank God I'm not a professional politician, because they have helped create this crime crisis in the city that we face, and I will
Thank you,
resolve.
Mr. Sliwa.
And so, hat tip to the New York Post for that one. But Jim, when it comes to the other issue that came up is, how do you get around the city? And Mamdani says something like, I either take a bike or I take a cab. Cuomo says he usually Ubers. And Sliwa says when he doesn't take the subway, he usually takes an Uber because I was shot in a cab by the Gambino and Gotti crime family, so I usually don't take a cab anymore. So slipping in one of the more dramatic parts of his long personal story there.
First of all, Greg, I'm glad you played that. Who was that guy? He's not wearing a red beret. Have any of us ever seen the top of Curtis Sliwa's head before? It's like he's in disguise. And yes, I have the quote, the transcript in front of me. I try to avoid. This is my best Curtis Sliwa impression. Listen to our interview with him for the real voice. But I try to avoid yellow cabs. As you know, I was shot in the back of a yellow cab in 1992 by the Gottis and Gambinos. But I find my way around. If I have to, I Uber. That's an Uber commercial right there. Uber, Curtis Sliwa's never been shot in. That's a sales pitch right there. Look, the other thing which kind of jumped out at me about the debate, and my colleague Brittany Bernstein did a great write-up, and she pointed out that Mamdani was basically trying to run as far away from saying abolish the police as possible, although the fact that he had tweeted it several times. Mm-hmm. I would point out Andrew Cuomo also said he had never said abolish the police. And then you go back to the transcripts of what he said back in 2020. I'll grant he has a little bit of wiggle room, but here's the quote verbatim. Across the country, people are saying it has to stop. We have to change, right? When they're saying defund the police, what are they saying? They're saying we want fundamental basic change when it comes to policing, and they're right. They are right. So, is that a full-throated endorsement of abolish the police? I'll grant there's some wiggle room, but he's not refuting it. He's not pushing against it. He's saying they are right because they're calling for fundamental basic change when it comes to policing. There are op-eds by activists who say, no, when we say abolish the police, we mean abolish the police. Every time somebody says, well, when they say abolish ICE, they want more kindler and gentler enforcement. And then there's activists go and say, no, we do not think ICE should exist, right? So Cuomo is no much better. Look, New York City voters, it's a free country. Vote for whoever you want. I completely see the dread everyone has for Mamdani and the idea that, everybody who's making more than, $200,000 in New York City, which is not a lot of money, is basically looking for Snake Plissken to get away out of the city, right? Like, so it's going to be really bad. If you want a right-of-center New Yorker to vote for an alternative, you have to give them something better than Andrew Cuomo. We put a lot of effort into getting this guy out of office. And the idea that, like, let's give up everything and put this sleazeball back in office. It's like, Cuomo's no better on abolish the police than Mamdani is. Is he less likely to do it? I suppose. But, like, the lesson of this from Cuomo is that he's a weather vane. If the dominant force in Democratic politics is to abolish the police, Cuomo's not going to stand up to that. He will go along with it. He will praise it. He will say they are right. Will he go on and completely abolish the police? No, probably not. But he's certainly not going to. You could see police budget reductions and things like that. Cuomo's not that much better. So, look, do we like Sliwa because he was on this podcast? Sure. Do we like Sliwa because he's such a colorful character? Sure. But he's also a guy who loves the city and cats, really loves cats. God help you if you have allergies. And he just seems like just head and shoulders better. Never mind the beret. Head and shoulders and the beret better than these other two guys. And he's running a distant third. And New York, you're bringing this upon yourselves.
Yeah, you can do a lot better, New York. It's the litmus test I've said before. Which of these three guys loves the city more than they love themselves or their political career? It's not a hard question. There's only one who loves the city more than they care about their political future, and that's Sliwa. So, it's right there in front of you. You got the commie, you got the creep, as Sliwa has said, and then you got Curtis Sliwa. So the choice is yours in about 2.5 weeks. All right, let's talk about ZocDoc, because hopefully you don't get shot in the back of a cab, but if you do, you're going to need a doctor pretty darn fast. And ZocDoc can get you a doctor very, very quickly, although in that case, they'll take you straight to the hospital. But is it time for that annual checkup? Is it time to get a dental cleaning? Is it time to get your eyes checked? Whatever it is, ZocDoc has a vast database of all the doctors very close to you, and they've got great reviews. And so ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment.
Greg, I think what I like best about ZocDoc is that it works fast, almost as fast as Jay Jones on the highway. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, are a good fit for any medical need you might have, and you can see if they are highly rated by verified patients. Once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. Now, appointments made through ZocDoc, typically are within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, and more often than not, you can actually find same-day appointments.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim has used ZocDoc to find a good eye doctor. I really didn't like my ENT, so a friend recommended another one. By looking at the reviews, I realized that was a good choice for me as well. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/3ML to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/3ML. That's ZocDoc.com/3ML. All right, Jim, on to our second martini now. And once again this week, I would say this is a mixed martini in a number of different ways. Actually, it's kind of all bad. Well, the more I think about this, what John Bolton did was wrong, and how Trump has characterized this has not been helpful. So yesterday, an 18-count indictment comes down against former National Security Advisor, former UN Ambassador, John Bolton. He's held a number of different positions in Republican administrations dating all the way back to the early Reagan years. 18 counts, 8 counts of transmission of national defense information, 10 counts of retention of national defense information. Basically, he was taking copious notes while he was at the White House, and then he was transcribing them into online Word documents. He was including classified information, according to the indictment, in AOL emails to a number of people, which is obviously not very secure. He also printed out and kept classified information after he was fired as National Security Advisor. The Iranians allegedly hacked his AOL account and were able to get some of that classified information. And now he surrendered this morning, I assume faced arraignment, and I assume pled not guilty. Now, of course, what complicates this, and what the media will also point out, is that Trump has blatantly said publicly to Pam Bondi and others, hey, We need to get charges going against these people, whether it's Comey, whether it's Bolton, whether it's Brennan, maybe Clapper, people behind the Russia collusion allegations and everything else. And so that makes it look like the DOJ is being shoved into this indictment. Bolton, in a statement saying, this is, the Biden administration looked into this at the Justice Department. They said no charges. And essentially, this is Stalin-esque, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. So, Jim, if the indictment is correct, he definitely broke the law here. And then we also have the political ramifications. So how do you see it?
Well, first of all, considering the record of some other prosecutors in the Trump administration, the fact that they got a grand jury to convict stands out because they have failed to do that against some other high-profile cases. Look, we generally agree with John Bolton, but we got to put aside those personal feelings when examining the question of did he break the law. The fact that it's 18 counts and not just a one-count allegation is, something that points to the degree of this not being something that's been done all willy-nilly. The fact that they chose to begin investigating this during the Biden years is an indication that maybe this is not just a pure vendetta. And let's point out that we've seen numerous cases of high-level government officials who have taken classified documents home, kept them in their personal offices. Famously, there were some in the box in the garage by Biden. And, of course, the entire virtual encyclopedia of classified documents down in Mar-a-Lago in all those boxes. So does it look a little hypocritical to pick on John Bolton this way? Yeah, it does. And as usual, the case for a conviction would be greatly helped if the President of the United States would stop jumping on Truth Social and raging and fuming about John Bolton. You should not do this because that makes it very easy for a defense attorney to convince a jury to say this is a partisan political vendetta. And I would just kind of ask listeners, if John Bolton had remained a Trump loyalist, if he had said Trump is the best, I completely agree with them, and he had not written his book being very critical of the president who he was national security advisor to, would Bolton still be prosecuted in this circumstance? I'm very skeptical. Would Bolton still have U.S. government security protecting him from the Iranian, assassination attempt and the desire of the Iranian government to kill him? I think that would still be in place. I think there's a whole bunch of decisions in which Trump allows his grudges and his desire for revenge motivate things like this. But it's entirely possible that John Bolton broke the law. It's entirely, and that's what we have trials for. He will have very good representation. And my guess is he and his lawyers will make the argument that what he did was minor, that it was of no consequence. Here's Greg, again, I really like Bolton, but couldn't they have at least indicted him on using AOL?
There's a lot of people who don't realize that still exists.
Dial-up, but yeah, my suspicion is that AOL is fine as it is down the road in Reston or something. It's probably not the most secure system you could keep classified information in, and so based on the evidence in this or what's cited in this indictment, Bolton used some bad judgment and probably deserves some sort of comeuppance for that. Does he deserve the full 9 yards that he's getting here from Trump's DOJ? Probably not, but we will see more. But I think this makes Bolton look bad, but I think it also looks like this is I think they'll have a very easy time convincing a jury in this area that this is a politically motivated prosecution, and I don't think anyone comes out of this looking better.
Yeah, and it's going to be prosecuted in Maryland, which is fairly deep blue. He lives in Montgomery County, I think, which is very, very deep blue. So what's the future here on handling classified information and charges? Do we need to change the law so everybody's not breaking the law? Do we need to take every case seriously? Or do we just let it become a political football? Because Hillary Clinton obviously broke the law, and Jim Comey during the final months of the Obama administration is like, let's just not do that. And then Joe Biden's under investigation, but he's an old man and he's losing his marbles, and so we're not going to do that. And then during the Biden years, Trump, we are going to prosecute him, and so now Trump's saying, yes, we're going to prosecute this one. So is this just going to become a political weapon, or is this going to actually be dealt with in a consistent way?
Greg, up until now, the rule has been that if you're famous, there are no consequences. If you're not famous, you could be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and your life can be ruined. And I think everybody would agree that's a lousy system. That's a very bad way to sort this sort of thing out. I think what would be better is, and since we can't say, there's no consequence for taking classified information home, whether it's in document form, whether it's having on, say, an email server, Hillary Clinton, but if you wipe it with a cloth, In circumstances like this, we have to have consequences for not protecting classified information, which every one of these people take an oath, and they get briefings on it. They get full instructions. Hillary Clinton's like, oh, nobody told me I could do this. No, you were explicitly told at the start of your time as Secretary of State, you must protect classified information, and you can't just handle it willy-nilly. So I think what we need is for the likes of Bolton and Hillary and Donald Trump and even people I really like Condi Rice and Joe Biden, every one of them should have some sort of consequence. Make it a fine. We don't need to lock these people up in San Quentin. We don't need to send them to ADX Supermax. But this is wrongdoing. This is breaking your oath. This is not what you're supposed to do. And I don't know what the right size fine is. It's got to be big enough that the person who's probably a multimillionaire or has made a lot of money on a book deal or something feels some pain. Let's say high 5 figures, maybe 6 figures. Something where you feel it. But at the same time, you're not, destroying this person's life or something like that. I think if you had a significant enough fine, then it would act as a deterrent, and the consequences, even famous people would say, okay, they're not going to put me in jail over this, but yeah, I could pay a pretty hefty fine. It would be a real pain in the neck for me to do this, so I better not take these documents home, etc.
Yeah. Disappointing, to say the least, assuming the facts in the case are accurate. Like you, I've dealt with John Bolton many times, and thought generally well of him, but if in fact this is true, then it's very, very disappointing. All right, well, let's get to the next sponsor here, and that is Quo. And one of the tools making a big difference for many business owners these days is Quo, which is formerly known as OpenPhone, as you probably know by now. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. If you're running a business, every missed call is potentially money left on the table. Think about the last time you had some other emergency in your home. We just had one where our washing machine broke down, a water valve went bad or something, and so you got to call someone in to get it and fix it. And so if the first person doesn't pick up the phone, you don't just sit there and wait for them to call you back. You call the next person on the list, and they come and they fix it and they get your business. Well, with Quo, you'll never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers.
Or, Greg, imagine if a tree fell on your house.
It's true.
Because those things happen, dear listeners. With Quo, your team can share one number and collaborate on customer calls and texts like a shared inbox, so anyone can jump in and keep your response times fast. You don't have to worry about voicemail. Quo's built-in AI agent can be set up in minutes to handle calls after hours, answer questions, and capture leads, so you will never miss a customer. So whether you're a solo operator who's drowning in calls and texts, or you have a large team that needs better collaboration tools, Quo is a no-brainer.
Get started for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/3ML. That's QUO.com/3ML. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, Jim, kind of a double shot here for the final martini here. And for that, we're going to look to liberal insanity in a couple of different ways. First of all, let's head to Don Lemon, the former CNN anchor who now has a podcast. He had Wajahat Ali on his podcast the other day, so that was really fair and balanced and right down the middle, and no radical statements made. Of course there are radical statements made, but the one we're going to show you is actually from Lemon. He's apparently a big fan of the Second Amendment now, but the reason he's a big fan of the Second Amendment is because he wants people of color to be ready, locked and loaded when ICE shows up.
Black people, brown people of all stripes, whether you're an Indian American or a Mexican American or whoever you are, go out in your place where you live and get a gun legally, get a license to carry legally. Because when you have people knocking on your door and taking you away without due process as a citizen, isn't that what the Second Amendment was written for? Go back and read what the Second Amendment says. And perhaps it will knock some sense in the heads of these people who are saying, well, it's all great. I don't believe they're doing it without due process. They're asking people for papers. They're not really beating people up. These people are doing things that are illegal. Nobody is illegal. It is a misdemeanor to cross the border.
So, Jim, I'm going to not recommend people whip out their firearm when law enforcement shows up at their door. That's probably not a good prescription for a long life. So we'll get to the clip from The View here in a second on their reaction to Jay Jones. But real quickly on Don Lemon, I guess he's a big fan of the Federalist Papers where people realize the Second Amendment is a safeguard against tyrannical government. But I'm not sure he's applying it the best way here.
Now he's pro-gun rights. I was thinking back, perhaps the good news is that Don Lemon is making these comments on his personal podcast, and he's no longer anchoring CNN This Morning. Listeners probably recall that he had encountered some turbulence in his final years over at CNN, most notably declaring that Nikki Haley at age 51 was no longer in her prime. Now, Lemon bats for the other team. Maybe he's going to have a different, people understand that metaphor, that he's going to have different criteria for assessing the prime of a woman than a bunch of the rest of us will. But he just apparently has this habit of blurting out things that seem ill-advised. And I would note that there was the fact that he was given this kind of trusted, not just trusted reading the news off the teleprompter, I love lamp, the stuff that we've come to expect from newscasters. But on the morning show, he was opining and he was kind of offering his 2 cents on when a woman's in her prime, for example, which is really relevant to the discussion of Nikki Haley. And so here he is. He's no longer with CNN. He now has this, and he's basically saying, let's go pick up an AR-15. Now, here's the thing. If, to his credit, or just an observation of the dynamics of the media environment we're in, if Don Lemon had said sane things yesterday, we wouldn't be talking about him on this podcast, right?
Yeah.
You and I can go through life without thinking about Don Lemon at all, except maybe when I order iced tea and I get a lemon with it. And I wonder what Don Lemon is doing these days. Or if I see a woman and say, wow, she's in her prime, and I think about how I define in her prime and the much wider range I have than notorious womanizer Don Lemon. And so you kind of look at this the reason he says this crazy thing, we're talking about somebody else who said something crazy. The way you get attention in the media environment now is to say crazy things. And I think this is bad. The social media algorithms measure response to something. They don't measure whether it's good response or whether it's bad response. So whether, if 1 million people respond to his podcast and say, Don Lemon, what are you talking about? Telling people to pick up the AR-15s and point them at law enforcement officers, you're going to get people killed. That comment or that response is every bit as good as, amen, Don Lemon, you tell people it's time to start the revolution, which is really bad because we have a system that effectively is now rewarding people for the craziest thing they can say. That takes care of example number 1. We have another example, but I just kind of feel like this is when was the last time, dear listeners, you heard about Don Lemon not saying something crazy?
Yeah,
that's the only way you hear about him anymore, right?
It's the only way he gets attention. Absolutely. Yeah. And so the other example is The View in the wake of the Jay Jones scandal. Alyssa Farah Griffin was talking about it, and Joy Behar could not have been more wrong when it comes to the reaction to the Jay Jones texting scandal.
Because what's come up in this conversation is this individual, Jay Jones, who's running for attorney general in Virginia. He's about a 36-year-old man running for attorney general who had some leaked text messages come out where he aspired to violence against Republicans. I don't know why it's hard for people, and I'm not this table.
I saw that.
Let me just say this.
But only Democrats denounced him, no Republicans.
But he's a Democrat.
Yeah,
that's my
point.
And the Democrats
denounced him.
Yeah.
No Republicans denounced Jay Jones. I'm pretty sure that's not true. And Democrats, many of them did, criticize the comments, but not one has actually said he shouldn't be in this race anymore. So, Jim, it's a little different than wacky opinions. This is just not even knowing what's going on.
Yes, and this is, a point I wrote about this in today's Morning Jolt. And if people are like, why are Jim and Greg talking about The View? Joy Behar says crazy things all the time. Yes, the point is not Joy Behar saying something that is crazy and factually wrong. If I say to people, a similar illustration of the phenomena I'm describing, if I said to people, the average person on the street, who's on The View? They might mention Joy Behar. They'd probably mention Whoopi Goldberg, who said that the Holocaust was not about race, who said that Joe Biden should name his wife Dr. Jill Biden to be Surgeon General because she's an excellent doctor. Her doctorate is in education, not in medicine. They might remember. The point is, like, with metronomic regularity, certain figures on The View say things that are crazy. That segment we just played begins with Alyssa Farah Griffin. To the best of my, I'm sure she probably said something crazy in her life, but I don't remember any of them. And like this dynamic I was saying is like the craziest things go viral. Except the problem is that on The View, Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, they say crazy things all the time. Joy Behar famously said that the residents of Palestine, Ohio, basically got what they deserved with that terrible chemical spill in the train because they voted for Trump, right? We have this scenario. It was Sonny Hostin who was talking about the death toll from COVID and was off by a factor of 4. Now, the death toll from COVID was bad. 250 deaths a day is bad, but she said thousands of people are dying a day. Not the case. She argued Republicans want to raise the voting age to 28. No one could find any reference to that. Like this is not like, oh, these people have crazy lefty opinions. These people just say things that are factually wrong regularly. And so people are like, well, Jim, why are you bothered by this? Well, imagine what The View could be if anybody on that show cared about getting it right. And the only thing I can draw from this conclusion is that nobody on that show cares. Not the producers, not anybody at ABC, nobody in the entire chain of command has looked at any of this stuff and said, we got to do better than this. We have to be more accurate when we discuss these things. I have characterized The View as a show that's about current events, hosted by celebrities who don't know much about current events, and perhaps most annoyingly, refuse to learn anything about current events. And that's how you end up with them making these statements like, the Supreme Court is poised to pass a bill contradicting New York City state laws. First of all, what the hell are New York City state laws? It's either it's a city or it's a state. Like, you know. And then the Supreme Court doesn't pass bills. Like like you get this nonsense. And I just kind of feel like and this is leading into our grand finale of this pod. Like, Greg, you and I, we our podcast is not perfect. I'm sure there are people out there who probably find it a little too irreverent or probably roll their eyes at Die Hard references, but we always have Tebby Troy to balance those people out.
Exactly.
We have just all of this, like, we try to get it right. Once in a while we get it wrong. It happens. But like we basically try to say, here's what's going on. Here's our best understanding. Here's our analysis. Here's a couple of jokes. Here's some, and we try to send you off into the world. And I don't see that in The View and a whole bunch of other podcasts and a whole bunch of other things out there. And so, like, if you listen to Don Lemon, you could come away saying, well, I should take my AR-15 and point it at law enforcement officers. And that could go really badly for you, right?
Yeah.
If you are listening to Joy Behar, you might think, wow, Jay Jones called for Republicans' children to be murdered, and only Democrats denounced him for that. What's wrong with you, Republicans? Why aren't you denouncing that guy who's calling for your children to be murdered? So, but maybe this is a good segue into our grand finale, Greg.
It is a good segue. This coming Sunday, October 19th, will mark 15 years, as best we can tell, from the start of the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. That's the oldest episode that I'm aware of. Back in 2010, we started. And one of the stories that day was in the New York governor's debate. Andrew Cuomo running.
Oh, my God. We're coming full circle.
Yes.
It's a flat circle. And in 2010, the New York Jets were good. That was the last time.
So are the Bears. And that was also the debate with the rent is too damn high guy. And so he didn't use the word affordability in every other sentence. But there's a cycle here that we're kind of seeing in some of this stuff. But as we mark 15 years, we've already gone long today, so we're just going to play one clip. And you all know what it is if you're longtime listeners. It's from the summer of 2016 in the wake of the horrific ISIS-inspired shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. We had found out that this guy had been flagged by the FBI twice and deemed not a major threat twice. And then we found out that this guy and his wife had actually cased Disney World. And Disney officials tried to get the FBI involved, and the FBI wasn't real interested. And so there had been a comment from Stephen Miller, not the one who works at the White House, but the one who's on Twitter all the time, talking about that maybe Disney itself would be better than the FBI at this. And here's how that conversation went.
What do they have to do to get rounded up? Right? I mean, just what is that threshold? Because in this case, this guy never tripped that threshold. And as a result of it, close to 50 people are dead.
You got me thinking when you mentioned what Stephen Miller said, that Mickey Mouse is doing more than the FBI to protect us. As the father, and we've mentioned this before, of a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, that would be the greatest episode of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse ever.
Oh, hands where I can see him. Oh.
Hey, kids, you want to help us catch terrorists? Let's check out our Mouseketools. We're going to have a stun gun.
I'm picturing like Disney's 24. Copy that. Oh, I don't have time to explain. I will shoot your wife in the knee if you don't tell me where the bomb is.
Goofy's doing enhanced interrogation techniques.
Hope you like water. See, there's our good martini, Greg.
Oh, Jim, that's a perfect encapsulation of the show, where even the most horrific possible news, frustrating government incompetence, can somehow turn into an appropriate joke. So that's a very good encapsulation of the podcast. We like to inform. We take the news seriously, but not ourselves too seriously, and try to leave you with a smile by the end of the day.
As listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. As you mentioned, the youth of your children then and the youth of my children then. Yeah. Listeners, I don't know if you feel like you've grown up with us, but you've been with us as our kids have grown up beyond the Mouseketool stage. And yes, there is something about the idea of you and I imagining Disney characters doing enhanced interrogation and/or torture to symbolize like we can't rely on the Joy Behar, Don Lemon. We're going to go viral for saying something asinine, crazy, and stupid. We may go viral for doing something really juvenile and kind of ridiculous and all that stuff. But we don't. This is not a podcast of shock value. Probably not. I can't believe these guys are still Jets and Bears fans. I can't believe. There's going to be occasionally surprises, but we don't. We like to think of ourselves as being anti-clickbait in podcast form, and I hope you're enjoying it. We're happy with our audience. Always happy to grow. So if you like it, maybe you want to recommend it to people. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And the way Greg and I do, hopefully we'll be doing this for another 15 years. And then I'm at retirement age at that point. So then I'm out of here.
No, that's exactly right. So we thank our listeners. We thank our colleagues who have been so encouraging in all of this. And Jim, as I've told people over the past 15 years, this is the favorite part of my workday, certainly. And I love all the work that I do, but getting to not only talk about, but in some cases vent over what's in the news is definitely cathartic. And it's been a great partnership, and we're going to keep it going for as long as possible. And we're excited about that.
Listeners, if you feel like you're just overhearing a conversation between Greg and myself, well, that's kind of the way it is. And yes, in real life, we just randomly tout products that we think are awesome.
That's true. So on that note, thanks for a great 15 years. Your listenership has mattered greatly, and we encourage you to keep listening. And like Jim said, tell your friends about us as well. We'd love to have them listening too. So Jim, have a great weekend, and we'll do it again on Monday.
See you Monday, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. And yes, please tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a terrific weekend and join us again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.